What's up, guys? It's Eric and Marcus from Rare Candy, and today we're back with another discussion video. It's been a little bit of time since we've done one of these, so we figured since rotation is right around the corner, we sit down and talk about what decks are still going to be decent or not decent post rotation. Once the format becomes breakthrough on. And actually, for this one, we are being joined by a special guest, Mr. Guy Bennett, who also
Hey,
runs.
buddy.
Yeah, he also runs his own Pokemon YouTube channel, Step by Step Pokemon. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Cool, cool. So, yeah, I'll actually throw it over to Guy just for a second, just to introduce yourself and just let the viewers at home know who you are.
Awesome. So my name's Guy. I've been playing for quite some time. I think I just missed 2 or 3 years around the 2010 era. But played my whole life since base set came out, and just really enjoy kind of making unique ideas. And I run step-by-step Pokemon, like Eric said. So look out for that. We'll be putting some new stuff up once all the Burning Shadows codes are legal. So yeah, thanks for watching, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem, man. And also, you guys may or may not have actually seen Guy recently. He was the Sylveon GX Pissimian player who was being talked about at North American internationals fairly recently. So you may have actually seen him on stream and not realized it was him. But anyways, so going on to the topic of the video, like I said, we're going to be discussing the decks that are going to survive the rotation and how the rotation is going to affect them. So a couple of things we should note. A lot of these decks are all going to be affected by the loss of Versus Seeker, Trainer's Mail, and a lot of these staples. So we're not going to really, I think, talk too much about how they lose Versus Seeker, Trainer's Mail, etc., because all of the decks lose this stuff. We're going to be talking more specifically about key cards that these decks are going to be losing and how that's going to affect them in the rotation. So the first one that we're going to start talking about is going to be Decidueye variants. That includes Decidueye Vileplume, Ninetales, etc. So I guess I'll take this one. Decidueye, I think the big one people realize is that Decidueye is losing Forest of Giant Plants. That's the big one. That's, the Stadium card that allows grass Pokemon to evolve immediately when they get played. That's kind of how players have gotten out their Decidueye so quickly. We're also losing Vileplume, so the item lock version of Decidueye is definitely taking a hit since Vileplume is not going to be in the format any longer as well. But then there's some other cards, I think most notably that come to mind, Level Ball and Trainer's Mail, like we just mentioned, also really hurt in terms of the deck getting set up. So there might be some other ones I'm forgetting, but off the top of my head, I feel like those are probably some of the most important cards that Decidueye is going to lose in this rotation. So, Guy, what do you think about Decidueye post-rotation? How do you think it does? Do you think it survives, or how do you see it fitting into this new
Yeah,
format?
I think it's like one of the toughest decks to figure out what happens post rotation. I think it does survive. I think it might kind of have almost like a Greninja effect, where when rotation happened last year and people thought, well, Greninja's losing some pretty important stuff, Battle Compressor to put some of those important one-up supporters in the discard or whatever. The XY Greninja, if people even, I know that wasn't, it was like 50-50 on whether that was even played in that deck. But anyways, and then it just comes back out of nowhere and is one of the top decks in the format because people kind of dismissed it, thinking that it may not be as viable. I think Decidueye is going to do something very similar. Any deck that drops damage counters is always really, really strong. And, I mean, everything that it's losing aside from Forest of Giant Plants, I mean, other decks are losing too, kind of like you said. It does get slowed down by losing Level Ball, VS Seeker. Well, no, not VS Seeker. But other decks are losing VS Seeker. So since it never really even played it in the first place, I mean, it kind of almost catches up a little bit to some of those. And you can run Skyla and Rare Candy and all the Tapu Leles you want and just get your Decidueyes out as quickly, maybe even more quickly than you did even with Forest of Giant Plants. You might see yourself, instead of having to get Decidueye and Vileplume out on turn one, getting two Decidueyes out, a lot quicker than you thought you would. Well, obviously it would be on turn two, because of the, you don't have the forest. But still, regardless, I think that's very, very likely. I think a lot of times with stage 2 decks after rotation, you might just want to play a heavy Skyla line with a lot of obviously like 4 Rare Candies, 3 Skylas, Tapu Lele, stuff like that to try to get out your stage twos as quickly as possible. I think it survives. I do. And I think you could pair it with a lot of different things. You can keep it with Ninetales if you want. You could try the Galissapod if you want to. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff that will still be pretty good paired with Decidueye after rotation.
Yeah. I'm not as confident just yet, just because I have not messed with Decidueye for post rotation just yet. A lot of people have been criticizing it because they've been saying, "Oh, you're going to have to run rare candy," and not that I've ever minded playing rare candy in the deck, but I don't know if that's that much of a bad thing because Metagross plays rare
It's not.
candy, Gardevoir plays rare candy, and the one upside to playing rare candy is that even though you don't have this monstrous first turn where you can get maybe a Decidueye or two in play, it actually frees up some deck space because
It
previously you had to
does.
play 4 Forest and 4 Dartrix, whereas post rotation you'll probably play 2 Dartrix and 4 rare candy.
Mhm.
So in a way, as far as deck space goes, rotation actually helps it in that regard.
Yeah.
And
And
oh, go ahead.
go ahead.
Oh,
I was just saying, Espeon EX is still legal too. So, I mean, with the format moving to a lot of evolution cards, dropping damage and devolving is not going to be a bad idea either.
yeah, no, I'd agree with that. Marcus, I know we went on there for quite a minute, but do you have any thoughts about Decidueye or?
No, I mean, I basically felt the same way that you were saying. Like, stuff is already playing rare candy, like Metagross, and like I played rare candy at the League Cup and at ARG States with Vikavolt and stuff, and honestly, it's not as bad as like people think it's like really bad to have to play rare candy, but we're also like losing since we're losing Forest, we're losing like Vileplume getting like turn one stuff happening like
Mhm.
you at least still get a turn with items and stuff now. We don't even get Vileplume anymore. Yeah, we're losing that too. So, yeah, I think that rare candy becomes a little bit more viable in the next the next format or whatever we call it, post rotation. Just because like we're not going to be getting item locked and stuff like turn one by four Vileplume stuff. So I think it's fine. I mean, I don't know. I'm really bad at playing Decidueye, but like I feel like it's fine to play it with rare candy too, and like you said, it frees up some spaces to not have to run a 4 Dartrix 4 Forest thing, and you can put in different stadiums and stuff now. So I don't think it'll be as bad as people think. I mean, again, haven't tested it, but I think it'll be fine. I think it'll still be good post rotation.
Yeah, and like you said, since Vileplume does get rotated, that inherently makes Rare Candy a better card. Just
Yeah.
because in previous formats, and especially probably about 2 years ago, we had like 3 item lock decks running around, making Rare Candy based decks like pretty much unviable. And even this past year, when Vileplume has been very popular, Rare Candy based decks still managed to start popping up, especially in this Guardians Rising format that we just had. So I would agree. And another key card that we're losing in rotation that really is good for Decidueye is Hex. So no longer will players be able to not only use Hex, but because they're losing Verse Seeker, we're not going to be able to be ability locked multiple times in a row. So you're going to get more consistent use out of your abilities now too. So it's kind of a trade-off. Yeah, you can't get out Decidueyes on the first turn, but rotation still does help Decidueye in a couple of ways. So I think, at first glance without testing, I think people are writing off Decidueye a little too quick. I think people are being too hard on it. That's not to say it'll still be the best deck in format or one of the best decks. I'm not sure, but I think people are just being too hard at the very least on this deck.
I think if anything, what hurts it more than losing the stuff that it's losing is if Volcanion becomes as prominent as it potentially could become. I think that's probably the one thing more so than any card that it's losing that could hurt it. And Volcanion may not become as huge as I would project it to become, but if it does, I think that could hurt Decidueye as much or more than the cards it loses.
Sure. So next up we have Tapu Bulu GX variants, another popular grass Pokemon as of lately. So Tapu Bulu GX is kind of proven to be a solid card in the Guardians Rising format, and I actually think this is one of the few decks that really doesn't care about the rotation. It loses Verse Seeker, but like we said, every deck loses that, so it really doesn't have any or gain any disadvantage from rotation like some other decks that we are going to talk about are. So Marcus, I'll throw this one at you since you've probably played Tapu Bulu a bit more than I have. How do you think Tapu Bulu does post-rotation? What are your thoughts?
Well, I like the Tapu Bulu Vikavolt variant a lot. Um, I think it's better than the Lurantis one, so it's probably the one that I'm about to talk about a little bit more. But I think Hex going away helps it. I don't think, I mean, Versus Seeker losing that kind of does hurt it, but people were already playing that deck as kind of like a thing where they were playing less Versus Seekers anyway and more supporters just to deal with the Garbodor stuff.
Yeah, just to interject, John Roberts, he actually played, I believe, at Internationals, a list that didn't play any Versus Seeker, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So some players already didn't even care about Versus Seeker.
Right. Yeah. So it doesn't get too hurt by that and stuff. I forget if we lose Heavy Ball or not.
We don't.
Okay. So we still get Heavy Ball and Ultra Ball and Nest Ball. So we keep all the ball search that it plays. The real only thing that you lose is Shaman, but even then, I played one Shaman and I didn't even always need that. So I think Tapu Bulu Vikavolt's gonna be great post rotation just because I don't know, it plays high Skyla counts. It already we keep Sycamore and everything like that. Obviously, we lose Fan Club maybe, but I played Bridget. I can't remember if we lose Fan Club.
I think Fan Club still stays because it was in Generations.
I think so.
Yeah. So
yeah.
It really doesn't even lose anything other than Shaman, which didn't even really need that. So I think Tapu Bulu Vikavolt's gonna be really good post rotation. I mean, Bulu is just a sick, swings big and doesn't have weakness, and I just love that deck. It's so good. So I think that's gonna be great. It doesn't I'm looking at a list right now for it, and it just it doesn't lose anything other than Shaman.
And now there's also full art in the Rainbow Tapu Bulu, so that makes the deck better too.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah.
So it got better, I think.
I think it's gonna do perfectly fine. I think I'm looking at the list that you're talking about. It doesn't have any Versus Seeker in it. We Lysander, I think we do.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. We
just get business. So.
But we got Guzma and stuff now, so I think it's gonna. I think Bulu Vikavolt gonna be great post rotation, honestly.
Yeah, I agree.
And I'm a little bit biased because I love that deck. But
cool. What do you guys think about the Lurantis version? I know the Vikavolt one's the more popular one, but I know the Lurantis one still, I believe, made Day 2 at a European event. I forget if it did well at any American events, but I do think it has done okay at certain ones. Do you think that is still a version worth considering?
I don't like it as much in testing as I like it with Vikavolt, just because you have to. It just seems clunkier to me, which is weird because Vikavolt is stage 2. They have Canyon too, but I don't like having Lurantis being weak to fire, and also I don't like having to attack with something to set up something else. I really like you just being able to hit with Bulu the entire game, with Vikavolt, and just powering it up through the ability as opposed to powering it up through the attack. But I don't know. That's just me. I testing it out and stuff. I just don't like.
We lost Guy. It looks like.
Okay.
Hold on, guys. Brief intermission.
Hey, was that just me, or did all of us drop?
Do what?
Was that just me, or did all of us drop from the call?
It was just you.
Oh, great.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
It's okay. All right, guys. We got him back. But
yes.
So, Guy, do you have any thoughts on either the Lurantis or the Vikavolt version of Tapu Bulu?
Yeah, I kind of look at everything through the lens of how's it going to handle Gardevoir now. And I like the Vikavolt version a whole lot better because you can just discard your energies after every attack and force Gardevoir to be able to, what's it going to need? 1 million energies to get a one-shot if you've got no energies on you. Mm-hmm. So I think the Vikavolt is going to be able to load up the Tapu Bulu a lot easier than the Lurantis. Plus, I mean, Lurantis is kind of, I would think, a dead card in that matchup too, just because it's 3 energies in a band on Gardevoir, 1 shot to Lurantis, I think, if I'm thinking about the math right. Yeah, that should be right. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the Lurantis version. I think you're gonna successfully live more and get higher damage outputs, like turn after turn after turn with your Vikavolt version. Plus, you can always spread a couple times with a Coco. Like while they're if it's the Diancie version of Gardevoir, you can spread a couple turns with Coco, and then you don't even need a ban. Like if you got 40, I mean, yeah, if you got 40 damage on the
Like Raltz's and all that.
whatever, then you could just have the Fighting Fury Belt and make it even harder to get knocked out. So you'll do 190 plus 40 and just knock it out. I mean, it it just seems way more consistent in my opinion. And I really like Lurantis too, but it just doesn't seem like it's the better card, their version at this point.
Yeah, I would kind of echo those things. You guys pretty much cover everything I could think of, and especially a guy like you said, you're kind of looking at everything now through the lens of how does it fare against Guardy, and especially I think the Lurantis version is worse because
Yeah.
whenever you take a turn to power up a Bulu with Lurantis, the 40 damage is nice because it actually makes the math work out better, but the problem is you're putting more damage onto the field for Gardevoir before you even get to make use of that energy yourself.
Yeah.
So I would kind of agree. I think Vikavolt is better, and I think post rotation it's still a solid deck. I don't really see it going anywhere.
And just one more quick thing with the John Roberts version, one of the cool things about it, I mean, it runs 2 baby Cocos right now, and with Rayquaza and Gyarados going away, and Guzma being a switch option anyway, since it runs 2 switch and 1 escape rope, you could basically like cut down to 1 baby Coco if you wanted, since you're not going to need it in those matchups as much. So you could still have 1, and then you could cut your escape rope and have 2 switches, since the Guzmas provide a switch effect as well. And if you wanted to, you could just throw in a 1/1 Octillery since you're losing the Shaman line. I don't know how good that's going to be. I haven't tested it, but I think that would be probably the only 2 cards that I could see getting cut out of that list to add in something similar to the effect of Shaman. Because I know when I've played around with the John Roberts Bulu list, I have there's one turn every other game where Shaman is so crucial and critical to setting up. So I would like to keep that kind of effect in the deck. So just a thought on something to try to squeeze in there with Octillery.
Yeah, there's also a Ranguru as well. That's definitely a consideration
yeah.
too.
Very true.
Yeah, but overall, I think we can all agree it's still just a pretty solid deck overall.
Mm-hmm. It is.
All right, so next up on our list, we can talk about Volcanion, since you actually mentioned that one a little bit earlier. Volcanion, I actually think, is one of the best decks post-rotation just because it really doesn't get hurt by much. Just kind of going through all of the cards that get rotated, I think Greninja takes a hit in post-rotation, and that's always been, one of Volcanion's worst matchups. So if it's going to lose a bad matchup, that's going to be good for it. With Mega Rayquaza leaving the format, that was previously a bad matchup for Volcanion. It keeps basically losing a couple of bad matchups, and it really doesn't lose anything that's integral to the deck actually working. All of the Volcanions are still in format. Ultra Ball is still in format. There's nothing I can really think of that deck loses. So initially, I think if people were looking for a safe deck to mess around with post rotation, Volcanion actually seems like a really solid one, and that hurts me to say because I really just hate Volcanion as a deck. I've never enjoyed it.
Yes,
but but just being objective here, it does seem like a very solid deck post rotation. So, Guy, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of the decks we've talked about so far. It's oh well, it loses this. It doesn't really lose anything. This is the first one we're talking about that's gaining a ton of stuff. I mean, you get Ho-Oh GX, you get Kiawe. I mean, you can go first and not attack and just be I can't attack, so I'm just going to throw 4 energies on my Volcanion and just that'll end my turn. That seems really lame to be able to do. So I don't know. I just think this deck gets super strong. I don't know. It's really good. Like you said, I'm not a huge fan of it myself, but that's just because it's just not my play style. But it's an incredible deck, and it only gets stronger.
Yeah, I'd say if there's anything going against it, it's really not a big deal. But if we're talking about the Decidueye earlier, if that does wind up seeing less play, that does make it's one less favorable matchup in the metagame. But like I said, if it's losing 2 unfavorable matchups,
Right.
that's definitely a good thing, I think.
it's all going to be how does it really handle the Gardevoir matchup to kind of go back to that point, and I think
Yeah,
it's just a little faster.
it can. I don't know. I think I actually might prefer Gardevoir in that matchup potentially, but it's it's not a bad matchup for Volcanion. I think it can handle Gardevoir if it has
It,
to potentially.
yeah, it almost doesn't feel like a bad matchup for either deck in theory. I haven't like super tested either one of them, but like just thinking about them, it I could see either one of them being like, oh yeah, I can win that match. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Volcanion has the speed, on its side, but if Gardevoir does get up and running, it just kind of rolls over,
Yeah.
the attackers that Volcanion has. But overall, again, I hate to say it because I don't enjoy Volcanion, but it seems like a super solid deck. I wish I had some more insight to the deck, but it just doesn't lose much, so I can't really speak to anything mind blowing. I guess the
Is
only
there
thing I
anything
can.
mind blowing about that deck?
What's that?
I said, is there anything mind blowing about that deck?
Shots fired. Um, if there's anything I can think of is the loss of Versus Seeker. I think might mean that you're going to see people dropping Ranger and also dropping Fisherman just because some of these one of supporters, if it's not Bridget, some of these one of supporters just really aren't that good in a deck without Versus Seeker just because they're just not very reliable. So especially with Guzma coming out, I think you can make the case to get rid of Ranger entirely anyways, just because Guzma will allow you to switch out of the effect that you place on yourself. And like I said, with Fisherman not being able to be accessed by Verse Seeker, I think Volcanion decks might be more focused on using Starmie, which they already kind of have been going that route, but I think you basically won't see a change in that, especially now that Fisherman's going to be a harder card to make use of.
Guzma removing the Volcanion attack effect is the dumbest thing.
Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about that really earlier. That's another reason Volcanion gets better after Burning Shadows. So
But also, like, Silent Lab and Hex are getting rotated. Those are hurting Volcanion. We keep XY promos 67 and up, so like it still has Hoopa, but like Skyfield's gone. So I don't know if that like I've never played Volcanion so I don't know if like Skyfield was needed for you to play Hoopa in the deck.
I don't think it's essential. I think more people like Brooklet Hill, but obviously it's good. But
Yeah.
I don't think Skyfield's super essential.
Yeah, but I mean it keeps Hoopa if it still plays that. I don't know, and then like Lab and Hex get rotated. So this deck now after this part of this video, I'm realizing Volcanion's like a lot better. like,
Well, that's the end of the video. Just play Volcanion. Bye, guys.
yeah. No, but
and also, I guess one more thing as far as matchups go too. If Gardevoir does emerge to be as dominant as it's kind of predicted to be, just because at the time of filming, Burning Shadows tournaments have not yet started, so we're just kind of guessing at this point. But everyone assumes Gardevoir to be good, and if that's the case, you'll definitely see an uptick in people playing Metagross, which Volcanion would absolutely love to see. So, just it's
For sure.
there's not too much else to really say. I don't think it's just positioned really well at the start of this new format. So next up, we can go into, speaking of Volcanion, we can talk about Greninja. So the Volcanion killer. And this is actually a deck where, unfortunately, I think Greninja is going to have a hard time surviving. I know last year, like Guy said, a lot of people thought Greninja was going to have a hard time adapting to the format, but I think this year might actually be where Greninja does finally see a drop-off in play. So, have a couple notes written down about Greninja. It loses a couple of very key cards. It's going to lose Dive Ball and Level Ball. That's going to be, it doesn't seem like a huge thing, but really Ultra Ball is not that good of a card in Greninja. I've never enjoyed playing high counts of Ultra Ball unless it's the Talonflame version. But even still, you need other ways to search out your basic Froakies and all of that type of stuff. And just the entire engine really gets messed up, I think, from losing those cards.
yeah.
A couple other losses. It loses Teammates, which some Greninja decks have not played previously, but most of them have played Ace Trainer. Ace Trainer is also leaving the format. And also, Silent Lab is leaving the format, which means that if Greninja ever were to even see play, people could just start playing the promo Giratina, and now, they don't really have a way to answer that anymore unless they start playing something like Alolan Muck. So I think Greninja has a lot of stuff going against it initially. Do you guys have any other thoughts? I'll give you this one, Marcus. You've played a fair share of Greninja.
I mean, I think it's going to be tough, unfortunately, because Greninja is like a pet deck of mine, I think, and I really want it to like stay good, but it's losing so much ball search, and like the deck, like me and Eric have always talked about, like whenever we're testing it, like the deck is just frogs and search, so it's like you're losing like most of the deck whenever you lose dive ball and like level ball and repeat ball and stuff like that. We still have ultra ball, but like I don't know. I think it loses too much to be good. Like you said, like Giratina promo, like if it did somehow come back, it doesn't have a way to counter that other than like a 1/1 Alolan Muck with 4 retreat cost line. So it's not looking too bright for it, unfortunately, which really sucks because that's like I love that deck. But yeah.
I will say this, I'll try to play devil's advocate here. Even though we are losing all of the ball search cards, we still do have Nest Ball and Timer Ball in the format. Granted, they're not...
Repeat.
What's that?
In Repeat Ball.
Oh, we have Repeat Ball?
I thought Repeat Ball was in Primal Clash.
Is it? I might be getting it confused with something else.
Yeah, I think it's in Primal Clash.
Yeah, I think it is getting rotated, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, we do have Nest Ball and Timer Ball, but unfortunately they just aren't as versatile as Dive Ball, basically getting anything out of your deck. Timer Ball is a flip and only for evolutions. Nest Ball is only for basics. But you could make the argument to play Brooklet Hill, actually, since Rough Seas is getting rotated as well. So the main stadiums we used to see with Greninja were Rough Seas or Silent Lab. But now, in place of maybe some of your balls, you could play the, like a heavy Brooklet Hill count, potentially. So I think that's an option, but
I agree.
I just don't see it. Like I said, it's too easily countered now, I think. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people will underestimate Greninja, and with no one really considering it as a deck, maybe it will pop up and just show up and steal an event since no one's prepared for it. But my knee-jerk reaction is that Greninja does take a serious hit.
Yeah,
I think it's easy to kind of have that same knee-jerk reaction and be like, oh man, losing level ball and dive ball really hurts it. But I actually think it's still really good. I mean, if you kind of look at its matchups, I think it's going to have a really good matchup. Like, let's just say you're completely set up, right? Granted, I know we have to get through the loss of level ball and dive ball, but let's just pretend you're completely
have you
set up.
played Greninja? You're talking about this deck getting set up? Have you played Greninja?
Yeah. I love Greninja. I played it a lot.
I'm just messing. Go ahead, though.
I think if you're completely set up, you've got a great Metagross, Volcanion, and Gardevoir matchup right off the bat. So if I can say, okay, I've got my deck fully set up and yours is fully set up, I'll take Greninja over any of those three. Add in the fact that Greninja Break gets the effect of Guzma, and switching into more Greninja Breaks so you can do more damage drops. I mean, it sounds pretty good. I think somebody will figure out a way to get past loss of level ball and dive ball, and then we'll all kind of jump on that and play it. I really do think it's going to be solid still, though, but I think the initial issue is how do you get past level ball and dive ball, and it may be a future set. Maybe a future set releases something that just lets you search, I don't know, for Pokemon. Who knows? But it's just generic search for Pokemon trainer. You never know, but I mean, I do think it's still got some viability. I mean, if you can Brooklet Hill out a Froakie and then Talonflame out a couple things that you need, I don't know. It's not that bad. Also, who's to say you shouldn't run Rare Candy in that? Replace all your level ball and dive ball slots with Rare Candies and Skylas, and get your Greninjas out there just as quick as your opponent's getting out there Metagrosses and Gardevoirs, You never know. So I think it's got some things to work through, like you all have said, but I still think it's got a lot of potential.
Fair enough. I think, like you're saying, once someone figures out a new engine like that's effective, maybe it'll be worth considering. Like I said, my knee-jerk reaction is that I don't really like it. Like, it's already even with all of the stuff that it has in format now, the deck just like breaks like terribly. So playing
Yeah.
playing a worse engine with that deck just like this is what happens anytime I play Greninja. Like a long period of time will go without me playing, and I'll think to myself, "Man, Greninja's a good deck. Why don't I ever play that?" Then I play a tournament with it, and you just get like the worst hands, and you're just like, "Oh, this is why I don't play Greninja." And that's with a great engine to work with. So that's
Yeah.
why I am I've been burned too many times by Greninja, so I think that's what it is. I might just be a little biased in this case, but like Guy said, I think if a good engine, uh, it gets figured out or becomes available, Greninja will be worth considering because you did mention some good points. It does have actually really good matchups against some of the big decks, and again, I'll try to be positive. Hex Maniac is rotating, so that will help your Greninjas out a little bit too. And if Decidueye does see, less play potentially, that could also be good. Vespiquen is rotated, so I'm gonna try to be positive, but
Hey, I've never put Tapu Lele in a deck and it got worse.
fair enough, fair enough. That's probably the best thing I've heard. So okay, fair enough. Marks, do you have any other closing thoughts on Greninja before we move on?
Nah, I mean, I really hope it. I really hope it does get good. I hope someone does figure out an engine to where like Greninja can still work because I love. I don't know. I don't know if it's because it's like water types and froggies and whatnot, but I don't know. I just like that deck a lot. And like I'm just all about it, and I really want it to keep working. It does seem like there's a lot going against it, but hopefully, like Guy said, maybe a new set comes out and like helps it, come back into the format as a viable deck.
Yep. So next up, we can talk about. I know a deck that Marcus is probably anxious to get talking about, and that's going to be Water Toolbox.
Ooh. Yeah.
So, so yeah, I'll pass this one over to you, Marcus. How do you think Water Box gets hit by the rotation?
So Manaphy goes away.
No.
No, we keep Manaphy?
Yeah.
Keep Manaphy?
It was in Breakpoint.
Okay. I thought we lost Manaphy. All right. So we still have Manaphy. So it's actually not that bad. Hex goes away, Silent Lab goes away. So that's good for it for sure. Dude, I don't know. I think it's gonna be good now. Actually.
Oh, well, you do lose Rough Seas though.
Yeah, you lose Rough Seas, but like you can still play Brooklet Hill. It is gonna suck not having Rough Seas to be able to just like have big Laprases with Fury Belts on, and then just like switch between the Laprases, healing them off with the Rough Seas and everything. But I don't know. I've like people played it with Brooklet Hill or whatever in tournaments before and done well. I think. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, but I think it's still gonna be cool. Like it does. I mean, I never played Dive Ball in Water Box. I always just played Ultra Ball. But I don't know. Man, I didn't know we kept Manaphy, so I've just not even been thinking about that deck. But I guess we keep Manaphy. I thought it was in like Ancient Origins or something.
Nope.
Okay. So yeah, I'm stoked now. I'm excited about that, especially if Volcanion gets big.
Yep, that's definitely true. I think it's worth mentioning we do lose a couple of the tech attackers that Waterbox sometimes play. We lose Regice, which is not really a big deal since EXs have been seeing less play. But I think the more relevant one is it's losing the Delta Plus Articuno, the one that takes extra prizes whenever it takes a knockout.
Dude, I've taken so many prizes with that thing. I'm gonna miss it a lot. Like I've legit like I've promoted Articuno and been like, all right, I need 3 heads to take 2 prizes or to take 3 prizes on this EX, but I'm just gonna do it anyway. And then like I straight up flipped 3 heads. The guy was like, all right, I'm leaving. I'm going back to Wilmington now. But yeah, no, I'm for real gonna miss that. It was just good because one energy can like if you're having like a bad opening hand or whatever, I guess like you can just like chilling size stuff for a little bit and then like get yourself set up behind that. And then even just like, taking extra prizes on like 1 prize attackers that were like, I mean, I know that Vespiquen's getting rotated, but like just for example, like flipping a couple heads and taking 2 prizes on a Vespiquen was always good. But yeah, so that is going to be another like kind of, I guess, kind of a big deal to lose that, but a bigger deal than people would think. But I don't know.
Um, yeah, Guy, what do you think about Water Box?
I never really played that deck a lot, so I don't know. I think one of the things that could hurt it a little bit is just Guzma being popular, but then again, you don't have via Seeker to access Guzma necessarily whenever you want it, because obviously one of the biggest things for Water Box is Lapras paralyzing you on a crucial turn where you can't get out of it. So I think Guzma could hurt it, but again, I mean, like, like I was saying, you don't necessarily always have access to a Guzma when you want it. Would be a Seeker gone. So I don't know. I think, like you guys are saying, it seems like it's still a pretty decent deck, honestly. And then that Manaphy comes out in Shining Legends that heals everything with the water energy attached to it. So I think that could definitely boost it up to kind of replace the Rough Seas. So yeah, I think it's still good.
Yeah, a couple other thoughts I've been having too is Tapu Fini GX. Even though
Oh,
I'm not a big fan of that card overall, but especially now that, like Guy, like you're saying, Ice Beam gets worse as a GX attack. Tapu Fini GX actually has a solid GX attack, so I think that might be kind of the GX move that Water Box will lean on, especially now that we have Pokemon that have to evolve multiple times. Getting rid of or being able to get rid of that Pokemon from play is kind of a big deal because unlike the basic heavy formats from before, they have to take time to re-evolve all their Pokemon and all that stuff. So I think Tapu Fini's GX move might be the preferred one from now on.
yeah.
But
Now that you're mentioning GX moves, if you look at your opponent's discard and there's 2 or 3 Guzma, you almost feel super safe to go ahead and use Ice Beam,
yeah, that's true too.
Or end them to 2, even if there's no Guzma. Then they have to like top that, pull a Guzma, and there are 2 or 3 cards that they're gonna have to get out of it. So I don't know.
Could be
I
decent.
never really considered much about Water Box, but it's a good
Yeah.
deck. But
It was a
I'm
deck
just
I
kinda
think that a lot of
bringing it
people
up.
like hyped up when they saw Aqua Patch, but then
Mhm.
other than like I think Israel Sosa, no one did too much with it. I don't know if it was just a deck that was never good or if it's just one that didn't see play by good players. I'm not sure, but it's always seemed decent, and it loses the Vespiquen matchup it had previously. If Decidueye does shy away from some play, that'll help it as well. I think another good thing it has going for it is actually that it's an all basic deck as well. Just
Yeah.
because a lot of the popular decks that look to emerge in the new format are going to be evolution based, and I think that really opens up, an area of opportunity for like Tapu Koko, Espeon, EX type of shenanigans, and if that does become kind of a popular counter strategy to these stage 2 decks that are on the rise, Waterbox doesn't really get affected by that. So I don't know. It still seems like a decent deck. I've never personally played with it. I'm just not a big basic, deck type of person, so it's never been a favorite of mine. But I feel like it gets slightly better in this new format potentially. But it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't blow me away its position in the new format, but it seems like an okay choice still. So,
I agree. I think that's a good point too about basic versus evolution decks. And that's a pretty good point.
So, I guess speaking of evolution decks, we do have one more water deck we can talk about. That's going to be Alolan Ninetales GX. And this is another deck that I actually think is pretty good post-rotation. It's been a deck that I have not really enjoyed in the Guardians Rising format. Anytime I've ever played it, I've always felt like it's just been missing a couple of pieces to get it to work. Or there's a lot of like turns where you have really awkward board states, where you have like a Ninetales with like very little energy on it in the active spot, and you can't power up a new attacker in the same turn. So it's had these weird things going against it, but I think Burning Shadows really helped it in some ways. We now have Guzma, which of course every deck has,
Yeah.
but Guzma's
Guzma
good.
helps so many things. It's ridiculous.
So Guzma will help it to get it onto the bench to use Aqua Patch again. We also have the new Alolan Ninetales, which is a great card post-rotation. That's actually a card I think is a little underwhelming for the Worlds format, but post-rotation is fantastic because its ability prevents it from being affected by EXs and GXs. And in a format without Hex, basically your opponent has to have Garbodor, or they're not going to be able to do too much. So I really like the fact that Hex is not in the format for this Alolan Ninetales deck. And Guy, like you said also earlier too, about looking through the lens of how does this fare against Gardevoir. I think decks like this and Tapu Bulu that discard their energies
Yeah.
to attack inherently are kind of decent, uh, in this new format. Um, so I don't know. What do you guys think about Alolan Ninetales?
I was like this close to playing Alola Ninetales at Nats. I was testing it till like 11 o'clock the night before. I couldn't get it to beat the Espeon Garbodor matchup, but I love the deck. I mean, it's really really good. Um, I've always kind of liked it with something like Zoroark, so you can just kind of like stand in, use your Aqua Patches, retreat, and then get back up and do all the damage you need to do again. So I've always liked that kind of a build with it, and the fact that Guzma aids in that concept, I think helps a lot, like you were saying. Um, I don't know. I mean, if Metagross gets super popular just because of Gardevoir, then I mean, we just kind of have to see what Metagross does and what Gardevoir does. I think, and then the new Alolan Ninetales, even against Metagross, I mean, like Matang can one-shot it against Volcanion, a baby Volcanion with like a steam up can one-shot it. So there's some matchups that it seems super good against, and there's some matchups that you would think it would be awesome against, and then it's like, well, I don't know how great it ends up being. So I don't know. Alolan Ninetales to me has always been like just on the cusp of being amazing, but I never figured out how to get it quite over that hump. So I don't know. I think it'll be an interesting deck rotation.
Well, speaking too of Metagross, one thing you could actually potentially tech in for your Ninetales deck is Espeon EX, like we just mentioned. Since Alolan Ninetales already runs 1 to 2 copies of the Tapu Kogo promo, you
Yeah.
can forego your normal Ninetales strategy and just spread a bunch and de-evolve all of the Metagrosses. That way, you can win that way. So I think Ninetales is actually not as bad as it seems against Metagross if you want to include Espeon. And
I,
Espeon just in general will be good against a number of Stage 2 decks if that does seem to be how the format's going to go. And
Mhm.
it's water type. If Volcanion's a good deck, well, water's obviously good.
Yeah.
So it's you know, I I'll be a little optimistic. I think it's actually kind of positioned well. Marcus, have you? I think you've played a little bit with Ninetales. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with what you guys said on like all that stuff about, especially Metagross probably being popular because of Guardy definitely being popular. I think that Metagross will give it a tough time, and yeah, you can use Espeon EX and stuff. Another variant that I think is good with it is like the Ninetales Decidueye thing, because then you can also like beacon for your Decidueye things and rear candy to into them and stuff. So that'd be another good way to play Decidueye as well. Is to do like the Ninetales Decidueye and throw an Espeon EX in there to de-evolve stuff and whatnot. So I think I don't think it's really like a bad play or anything next format. I do think that Metagross will probably be popular, which will give it a hard time, but I don't think that there's too much more going against it, honestly. So I think it could still be solid, and I definitely like the idea of playing like the Ninetales Decidueye thing. So since you can like
Yeah.
beacon for all your stuff that you want to rare candy into.
It's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it seems like Ninetales has some promise. I'm really hoping, like you're saying, Guy, that it does kind of become a good deck because it feels like it should be good. It has all these great attacks, has all these tools like Aqua Patch, but it's always been, I think, just a little short of
Hmm.
being where it needs to be. And who knows, maybe this rotation will help it finally get to that point. We'll see. So I think that pretty much concludes for our water decks. Next up, I think we have Darkrai. We can talk about that one. Or we can even expand that to dark variants in general, but I'm just going to assume we're talking about Turbo Darkrai. And I think this is another one of those decks that really doesn't lose much in rotation. All of the core components to the dark variants pretty much stay. Altar of the Moon, Max Elixirs, Choice Band Fighting Fury Belt. All the attackers stay as well, so just my knee-jerk reaction, Darkrai really doesn't gain or lose much from this rotation. I think it just kind of, I could be wrong, but I feel like it kind of just remains a little bit stagnant. But do you guys have any thoughts about Darkrai? I'll pass this one to you, Guy.
Um, I've always had similar feelings to Darkrai like we do to Volcanion. I've always kind of hated it. It's just I got back seriously into the game since 2010, and all I've ever seen is like Darkrai, Darkrai, Darkrai. So I'm kind of tired of it just for that reason. But I feel like initially it should be a little worse just because Gardevoir resists it. But at the same time, I don't see it like at first I thought everyone was going to play Gallade in their Gardevoir list, but now I'm seeing lists running around that don't even have Gallade in the list. Maybe that won't be a permanent thing, but at the time of filming this video, it's almost like a 50-50 as to whether Gardevoir is even playing a copy of Gallade. And I think that kind of, if that's not included in most Gardevoir lists, then that certainly helps Darkrai and most Dark variants a lot. Obviously, the new GX helps the deck out a lot, just getting more energies on the field. You get 4 of them out pretty quick, it seems like, just to add 80 damage to your attack in a super ideal turn if you wanted to. But I don't know. I mean, it seems like kind of like you're saying, almost like you can't really tell what's gonna be the outcome of the deck. Is it stagnant? Is it good? Does the GX help a lot? Are people playing Gallade in their list for Gardevoir? Does the Gardevoir resistance hurt as much as you think it might? I don't know. There's something out there. I don't remember what it is. There's some card that takes away resistance that you can put down for a turn, I think. Is it like a stadium? Like,
yeah, it's Magnetic Storm, but it's
Yeah.
from Flash Fire,
It is?
I believe it is.
so we lost it like 5 years ago, is what you're saying. I
This
thought
will
there was
happen
something
when you don't
else that
play.
removed- yeah, when you don't play. I thought there was something else. I thought there was something that removes resistance. Maybe not. Let me check my notes and see.
I know Wildlands
yeah.
is a card that makes resistance affected on the bench, but
Yeah, or weakness. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe there's not anything that reduces or that eliminates resistance. I could have sworn there was something else aside from Magnetic Storm.
could be.
Maybe
Maybe
not.
I'm the one forgetting.
Who knows? I don't know. Maybe there's not.
Well,
But does it even matter in the first place? Is the essential question. Does Gardevoir resisting it even make that much of a difference?
it might still be a bad matchup either way. I don't know. What do you think, Marcus?
It like I don't know. I think I don't think that Gardevoir resisting it is a huge deal. You've got things like Choice Band, and then like it's resisted by 20, so you can just throw another energy down. I guess that maybe like sounds a lot easier than it actually is, but I don't know. I don't think it gets hurt too much. I mean, it still gets its max elixirs and everything like that. So I think it'll still be good. Like Guy said, it also depends on like if they're playing the Gallade in their deck too. But yeah, so because Gallade would definitely give it a hard time. But yeah, I don't really think it loses too much that hurts it really bad. It's got Alter and stuff now, which is a good replacement for like variants that were playing like Parallel and Silent Lab and everything. So I don't know. I think it'll still be good. I think it'll still be decent, and I think a lot of people are going to do the Darkrai GX thing in there to maybe help it get some more energy on the board or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, I don't think it's bad. I think it's still okay after rotation.
Yeah, I think it just kind of remains a little bit stagnant. It'll be, I think, kind of like how it has been in the Guardians Rising format. It's had some things going for it, but it could potentially be a good meta call, depending on how like the meta starts to shift. And so, like in the Guardians Rising format, everyone assumed Darkrai was just dead.
Right.
You know, and initially people weren't playing Darkrai, but after changing around their list to adapt to the Guardians Rising format, you know, a couple of Darkrai decks did pop up here and there, you know, doing well at some bigger events. So you never know. It could be something similar where, especially if people aren't playing fighting weak Pokemon, you know, Gardevoir players might drop their Gallades. And, you know, if that situation arises, then, you know, Darkrai has like a window of opportunity. And who knows, maybe, you know, looking at the big decks in the format, they're all ability based. Maybe you'll even see some like really old school like Darkrai Garbodor type of deck pop up where you shut off abilities.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's one of those decks that's, or Dark in general has always been a variant that just kind of like endures in some way. And I feel like this will be the same way. It'll figure out a way to survive. I don't know if it'll be like a tier 1 deck or anything like that, but I wouldn't count Dark out. Just it's
Yeah.
literally since Dark Patch and Darkrai EX got printed, some Dark variant has always been in the game. So I don't see a reason for that to really change since they keep printing good Darkrai's.
Yep.
So that's going to be Darkrai. I think next up on our list we have Metagross. So we can talk about Metagross. We've already been mentioning it a little bit here and there in this video. And it's mainly been getting some hype because of Gardevoir's hype, since Gardevoir is weak to metal. And I really don't think Metagross loses much in the rotation. It's another one of these decks that really, kind of does okay. So, I don't know. I haven't really messed too much with Metagross. Have either of you guys played with it in the Guardians Rising format much?
I like it. I think for the newest set coming out, I mean, obviously it gains. Hey, can you guys see me? Sorry.
Yeah, your
All right,
feed
cool.
did freeze for a second, but it's fine.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I think it gains Necrozma GX, which could be kind of interesting. I haven't tested it out yet. Obviously, I really like the deck pre Guardians Rising and pre rotation, and pre Burning Shadows. But with Burning Shadows gaining Necrozma, being able to accelerate psychic energies onto it, I mean, maybe your Volcanion matchup won't be that terrible when you can one-shot Volcanions and Ho-Ohs with your Necrozma. You discard 3 energies, you're one-shotting Ho-Oh even with 190 HP. So I don't know. I think it's pretty strong, and I think it gains a pretty good partner in Necrozma, which can, I don't know, maybe it's the partner or answer for Volcanion that it was looking like. I'm just not sure if you want it to be solely a Necrozma-based deck or be really weird and run like 5 metal and 4 psychic. I'm not sure. That way you can attack with Metagross when you want, and you can attack with Necrozma when you want. And as weird as it sounds, I mean, there's partners to help that process, like the Oricorio that searches for 2 basic energies. So then you could like Ultra Ball or Sycamore them away, so you get whatever energies you need in the discard. Or there's the Smurgle that if the wrong energies in the attached to your active or whatever in the discard or whatever, you can swap out basic energy types if you need to. So I don't know. I mean, I think there's stuff that can help that deck get even better. And obviously it gains a lot of good matchups aside from Volcanion post-rotation. So I like it still. I think it's really solid.
Yeah, I'm not sold on trying to tech out Metagross to beat Volcanion. I think you just it's one of those matchups you just accept that you're going to get dumpstered and just hope that you don't get paired against it next round, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty
Marcus, what do you think? I know you've messed around a little bit with Metagross. How do you feel about it post-rotation?
I don't even like it in this rotation, but I don't know what it like in this format. Like I'm just whenever I've played it, it's been like way too clunky for me. It hasn't like ever like worked out well for me trying to play that deck. So I don't know. I'm a little bit biased against it just because I can't ever get it to work. It's always just too slow, and then like my opponent just like dumpsters me, like not even like bad matchup, just like I'm going slow, and then like I just get wrecked. So I don't know, but it's just me. Like I guess like I'm just like I don't know. I'm not the best Metagross player. It's obviously a good deck because it's done well, it's performed well, and people are still playing it and stuff. But yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah, a couple things I do think that Metagross has going its way is we've mentioned a couple times, but Hex is leaving. And that's actually really big because sometimes if you can just Hex Metagross maybe like 2 turns in a row or something, that can buy you a big enough window to come back and, kind of reclaim the game.
Yeah.
If Greninja does kind of fade away a little bit, that could also help Metagross since Greninja was... There we go. I think we lost you for a second, guy, but...
Sorry about that. I don't know what's going on.
That's okay. But if Greninja does start to shy away from play, that can help Metagross. And there was one other card I was thinking about earlier while you guys were talking. I'm trying to think what it was. Oh yeah, we are losing the evolutions. So previously, Espeon Garbodor was
Good
not...
point.
that was not a very good matchup for Metagross because they had Ability Lock and they could, or even if they don't get out the Ability Lock, they can still get out Flareon and hit you for weakness. And Vespiquen also was never a good matchup. It forced Metagross to play weird cards like Carrion or Oricorio to help deal with it. So the fact that that's going away frees up some deck space for you. So it has a couple things going for it, and with Gardevoir being as popular as it looks to be, Metagross seems like one of the best decks, I think, initially for post-rotation, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it doesn't really lose too much, like I said. I think it just gets some better matchups overall.
Yeah. I'm totally jumping on the Necrozma build. I just got my playset the other day.
Oh, snap.
I really like it.
So we'll see. Maybe Necrozma will help out Metagross. So
I'll
we'll have
rewatch
to
this
see.
video in a couple months and it'll be terrible. And I'll be like, oh, $1 Necrozmas now.
Oh man, I hope not. I hope not, at least. Yeah, so Metagross definitely seems good. I guess we just mentioned Espeon Garb, so let's talk about that one, Espeon Garbodor. It's been, especially for the past couple months, it's been one of the most popular decks, if nothing else, in the Guardians Rising format. Since it's one of those decks I feel like whenever I've played against it or with it, it just has solid matchups against most things. I never feel like I'm in a dominant, like I never feel like I'm playing a very, very powerful deck when I'm playing it, but I feel like I always have a chance against pretty much no matter what I'm playing against. And I think that's what's made it a solid deck for the duration of the Guardians Rising format. But I am not so optimistic about it post-rotation because we are losing the evolutions that, can change your Espeon's typing. So previously you would play something like a Flareon to deal with your your Decidueye matchup or your Metagross matchup. You could play Vaporeon to deal with Volcanion. And you don't really have that option anymore, and I think that's pretty big, actually, if I had to say. What other thoughts, Guy? I know you played Espeon at Internationals. What do you think about Espeon at post-rotation?
Honestly, I think it gets so bad after rotation. One of the best things about Espeon Garb was just attaching a Psychic Energy on turn 1, getting your Espeon and confusing them. And now you can Acerola or Guzma out of that position, and that seems pretty bad. Then when you get your Garbodor going, I'm sure a lot of decks are going to be Gardevoir. So there goes 10 item cards back into the deck. So that seems pretty bad. It already has a terrible Metagross matchup without Flareon. I don't think it can beat Vikavolt Bulu because it's just not going to run that many energies in the first place. And if you're ever threatened by Espeon knocking you out because of the energies attached to your Bulu, I mean, just discard all the energies from Bulu. Like, I don't know. I just think it gets really bad, and I already sold off my expensive versions of Espeon.
Smart man. What do you think, Marcus?
About Espeon and stuff. I don't know, like, I want it to be good because I just got those new Espeon promo box thingies with all my store credit. But yeah, I don't know if it stays good. Like you guys said, it loses like the evolution thingies, so you can't swing on as much stuff for weakness or whatever. But I don't know. It's always seems pretty solid to me. But yeah, it also seems kind of like a. I don't. Maybe I'm wrong. It always seems kind of like a Metacall thing to me, or whatever, to play the Sylveon GX and stuff. But and then we lose like its matchups, like Vespiquen, for example, where you can like divide and then just knock out a bunch of things. And so I don't know if it. I think the main thing, in my opinion, that it might lose is, I mean, obviously the evolutions, but then like it loses like its good matchups that it had. I think.
Yeah, I think it's just positioned really like poorly in the next format, just because Gardevoir, like I mentioned, just shuffles their item cards back into their deck. Right. Metagross is kind of tough because you never really one-shot them and they just max potion. I will say this, you do have an out against Metagross if you do decide to go the spread route and maybe play an Espeon EX as well. Like I've been saying, you can use Divide GX and maybe even Tapu Koko as well, and then try to win that matchup by de-evolving your opponent's Metagross. So I think you would definitely have to adapt to Espeon to what the metagame would be. I don't think the old version will cut it just because it loses so many important pieces. I think you'll have to really play it as more of like an anti-meta type of deck, I
Yeah.
guess. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just not like Guy said. I think it gets kind of bad. So not too excited for Espeon.
Yeah.
But on the plus side, we still have Drampa Garbodor, and I think this actually is a version that remains a little bit more intact. As far as rotation goes, it really doesn't lose any key components of the deck. It loses Team Magma Base, but we gain the new Potown from Burning Shadows, which is an easy replacement and actually does more damage than Magma Base did. So my initial reaction for that deck is that it can survive potentially. So, you still have the problem of Gardevoir shuffling in items back into their deck. But I don't know, Gardevoir really usually doesn't play stadiums from what early lists have come out to be. And if you can get a Potown to stick and, they have to evolve up into Gardevoir, then that might make the math for your Drampas work out really nicely. But yeah, I think that version, if I was going to play a Garbodor variant, that would be one that I would be much more inclined to still play as opposed to Espeon. What do you guys think about Drampa?
I think I think it's still good. We still have Rainbow Energy and stuff, so like you can still get damage down on the bench to Big Wheel, to Berserk for the 180 with the choice band and everything like that. So I think like the Drampa Garb variant, I think that's just I think Garb is just gonna depend on like how item heavy stuff is. I mean, since we're losing so many item heavy things like Versus Seeker and Trainer's Mail and all that stuff. But I think Drampa is gonna always be. He just seems like a good, like, I don't know, like I'd throw him in Water Box, I'd throw him in different kinds of decks just as like a good tech. His Righteous Edge is always gonna be good, I think. With all the special energy and everything that's around. You can, if you're trying to make him an attacker, I guess, in your deck with like Berserk, you can always still play Rainbow Energy even though we do lose Magma Base. So, and then Big Wheel has like, I always hate big wheeling, but like whenever you do it, it's like it's never bad, I guess. Like you lose whatever other GX move you could do, but then you get 10 cards. So I don't know. I think Drampa's still going to be a solid card and stuff, but I don't know if like Drampa Garb. I think that's just going to depend on how the meta, like playing it with Garbodor and everything. I think that's just going to depend on how the meta looks post rotation.
Yeah, and you actually brought up something that I didn't, or I kind of forgot about, is that we are losing Versus Seeker, so that actually is pretty bad for Garbodor variants just in general because all decks will inherently be less item reliant. We're going to be running more, thicker counts of actual supporters, more counts of Lele. And so I think that is really going to hurt Garbodor just as an archetype. Drampa, on the other hand, like Marx is saying, still seems like a very solid Pokemon. And, I don't see any reason for it to go away. I think it'll still pop up here and there. But yeah, I think Garbodor does get hit a little bit just in general. Not so much the Drampa part, but more so the Garbodor portion of the deck. What do you think about it, Guy?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I've always wanted to be extremely hesitant and resistant to admitting that Garbodor Drampa is the better Garbodor version. But I mean, you can't argue with the results. So I think it's definitely the better version. I think of any existent Garbodor variant that's out there, I think this is the best one that makes it through rotation. Who knows what else will arise as far as partners for Garbodor, but at the moment, I think that's still the best one. I'm not a huge fan of the deck just because it's not as weird as it sounds to be like kind of a Garbodor player. To say that a Garbodor deck isn't quite my playstyle. I'm not a huge fan of the deck, so I don't really have a lot of experience with it, but it does seem like the better of the two post-rotation.
Yeah, and what do you guys think about Potown versus Rainbow Energy post-rotation? Do you think, do you play a combination of those, or do you favor one over the other?
It's a good question. I don't know. I think that would need some pretty in-depth matchup-specific testing to have for me at least, to have a confident answer in that one.
Makes sense. Yeah, I haven't tested it at all. I'm just trying to just thinking out loud. I think I guess more at this point about it.
Yeah.
Marcus, what do you think about it? What's your first impressions of that?
Um, I don't know. Kind of. It just depends on like if you can get it to stick. Just because like there's the field
Yeah.
sports and stuff like that, or there's stadiums where um, I don't know. I haven't tested it, so I can't like say like solid thing. But I think in theory
Yeah.
maybe no energy might be better, but I don't know.
Fair enough. Yeah, the reason I bring it up though is just because the format does look to be very evolution heavy, and if the two biggest decks or biggest evolution decks in format don't run stadiums like Gardevoir and Metagross, Potown could potentially stick and make the math for Drampa pretty decent to take one hit knockouts. So that's the only reason I'm asking about that. I'm really curious to try that out and see if Potown, how that affects the deck, especially post rotation. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
Drampa overall will still be a solid card. I don't want to commit to an answer on Garbodor because it's one of those things where if people underestimate Garbodor and start getting greedy with their item cards again, Garbodor has obviously a great chance to pop up and take advantage of that. But just with losing Versus Seeker and and things like Trainer's Mail, I'm less inclined to play Drampa in a Garbodor deck. But
Yeah.
yeah.
If we start replacing VS Seeker and all that stuff with random receiver and puzzle of time, then sure, let's do
Oh
it.
yeah, definitely. So we'll just have to see how that goes. But as of right now, I think it's better than Espeon Garb. I'll say that.
Yeah. That seems like a good statement.
Yeah.
I agree.
So, and I guess since we're talking about Drampa Garb, we can also mention Drampa Zoroark, which has kind of emerged to be, one of the best decks in the format for the Guardians Rising format. How do you guys, feel about this one? This is another one of those decks where it really doesn't lose much as far as actual cards from rotation. I think it's more of those decks that its position will switch or shift based on what are the popular decks post rotation more than what cards it loses post rotation.
Yeah. Agreed.
So I think it's another one of those decks where again you can obviously just switch out your magma bases for Potowns and kind of call it a day there. But on paper, looking at I think the three big decks for post rotation, which are Volcanion, Metagross, and Guardy, at the time of filming at least, I'm not sure if I like Drampa Zoroark in that type of metagame.
I agree.
Your Volcanion matchup might potentially be decent, but I am not as excited about it for Metagross and Gardevoir, though. I'm a little hesitant to play that deck in its current state for post rotation.
Especially losing Flareon too. I mean, not many lists ran it, but I mean, if you needed an out to Volcanion, Volcanion just wasn't popular enough. But if you needed an out, the easiest out is gone.
Yeah, that's true. I'll say this too, it does gain an extra slot because a lot of players would tech or Choreo to deal with Vespiquen. And now that that's rotated, it does free up a spot for the deck. Teammates has also been rotated, which was a popular choice for the deck. So there are some cards to be replaced, but again, overall, I'm not too enthusiastic talking about it. It's one of those decks that I would kind of be scared to take to one of the first big events for this post-rotation format.
I agree.
Yeah. Marsh, you have any other closing thoughts either?
I never really played Foxy Drampa, so I don't really know too much how it plays and stuff. But yeah, like I don't know. I remember one of its like good matchups was like Vespiquen, which is gone. I mean, it seems like it could be solid. I don't think it's like one of those decks that it's like, oh, this is definitely gonna be bad. I definitely would test it for sure before like I don't know. Yeah, I don't have much to say about it just because I've never even like practiced with it on PTCGO or anything like that, which I probably should have at this point. But yeah, I just never did.
Fair enough. Okay, so I think that's pretty much all of the current decks that existed in the Guardians Rising format. We might be forgetting one, but I think that's the biggest ones. I guess going into this post rotation, we can also talk about the new decks that came out of Burning Shadows. And I think the first one, I guess the most obvious one we keep referring to throughout this video is going to be Gardevoir GX. And definitely looks to, be a very good deck. We might be wrong, but all of the factors right now are pointing to Gardevoir being one of the best decks in format whenever it's legal for tournament play. So, what do you guys think? How do you think rotation affects Gardevoir?
I mean, I think it's probably the easiest deck to argue a case for it being the best deck in the format, even though it's literally never attended a tournament yet.
That's really interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
It just seems so good. I mean, everything it does is like one. I mean, what I'm trying to think of any card ever that has accelerated energies, stacked damage the way it does, and recovered the way it does, with the amount of HP that it has, with the support that it has from something like Diancie, and it just seems too good, to be honest. And it can split and become a fighting Pokemon. If you want to candy up into that, you can. I mean, like, it's got a built-in tech in its evolution line, and that tech even has a ability that keeps you consistent, which pairs well with Octillery, which is really good since we're losing Shaman. I mean, it just seems too good, to be honest.
Yeah. No, I would kind of echo that. And in my early testing with Gardevoir, there's not really any cards I can think of it loses. The only thing I could see it maybe losing is, Hex to be able to deal with Greninja, since Greninja is actually a very good deck to play against Gardevoir with.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be a problem. But at the same time, we have the Giratina promo that Greninja can't easily counter post-rotation. So, I don't know. It just seems so good. The only thing I can think of other than that is, since we are losing Versus Seeker, I think that makes Fisherman a worse card in the list, so I think that's probably a card that I would cut post-rotation. Not all players even seem to be gravitating towards Fisherman for the Worlds format as it is, but I think post-rotation losing Versus Seeker just ensures that no one's probably going to play that.
Yeah.
Trying to think. Another thing I've mentioned a couple times throughout this video is the potential for like an Espeon EX Tapu Koko spread type of strategy for some of these decks. But Gardevoir actually is probably, I think, the best deck to deal with that because personally, I've not been a fan of Diancie. Just, it's not been a card that I've enjoyed so far. But especially if this strategy becomes something that people try to do to beat these Stage 2 decks, Diancie becomes a much better card than it debatably already is, since you can just run thicker counts of Curlia and get them out quicker with Diancie. So out of all of the evolution decks, I think it's most well equipped to counter this like spread Espeon EX type of strategy that could potentially pop up in the game. So yeah, like you said, good deck is good, basically.
Yeah.
It's about dang time an evolution deck feels like the best deck in the format, like kind of unarguably. Well, I mean, maybe not unarguably, but I don't know. I hate big basic decks, so I'm just so happy to see evolutions becoming a big thing.
Definitely. I'm really excited for this. Me and Marcus, we've both like on this channel and just like even in private, probably since 2012, have been whining and complaining about how everything's just big basics. Hey, I'm just going to attach like one energy or one attachment and just swing for big numbers. And I've definitely missed the all of the big setup based decks, and I'm just super excited for what Guardians Rising did to the format and what this rotation looks to do, getting rid of some of these very aggressive cards like Shaman and Trainer's Mail. And it definitely looks to be a very promising, type of state of the game, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
And we can talk a little bit. Oh, go ahead.
I was just kidding. Go. Sorry.
Oh, you're good. You're good. I was just gonna say I'm stoked that we're like we brought back some like rare candy Pokemon where you rare candy and then they just sit on the bench and like power stuff up. Now it's like finally like you rare candy and attack with it. Like I'm excited it's a Stage 2 that's not just a bench sitter support Pokemon like Vikavolt. It's like a Stage 2 that's like you rare candy into it and you're trying to swing. So I'm stoked.
I could be wrong, but I think the last before like the Sun and Moon block and all that, I think the last like big Stage 2 deck that was like super good and not just like a rogue deck was like maybe Empoleon debatably,
Yeah.
like the last one that actually
Yeah.
attacked.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I can see that.
I know we had like Kingdra from one of the Plasma sets that was like kind of a rogue deck at one point, but just generally speaking, there hasn't been many strong attacking Stage 2 decks in just so many years, whether it's been because of big aggressive basics, a million item lock decks in format, whatever it's been. There's always been some obstacle for good Stage 2 Pokemon to overcome, and now we're finally at a good spot for that.
Yeah.
But we can talk more
Stage
about that
2's
in a. Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying they never make it to the active spot in the last few years. They just sit on the bench, help with something.
Yep, basically. So say we can talk more about that in a second.
Basically.
Hey, I see what you did. But we still have, I think, one other notable Burning Shadows archetype to talk about, and that's going to be Golisopod GX. This is probably the other most hyped, I think, new GX out of Burning Shadows as far as playability goes. And I think unlike Gardevoir, the verdict is still out on this one to how good it is and what route you should go to build a deck around it. I know there's, at the time of filming, the big ones people have been discussing are Golisopod with Zoroark, Golisopod with the Promo Lurantis, and or the Evolutions. So those seem to be... Oh, and also Decidueye. I did forget about that variant as well.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, we don't even have a clear idea of what is the best route for that deck and if it's going to make a big impact at Worlds and some of these other events going on around at the same time. But assuming it does, kind of make a name for itself, how do you guys see Golisopod doing in the post-rotation format? I'll pass it to you, Mark, since I know you have actually played with the deck a little bit.
Yeah. Like on paper, it just seems like it's really good, but like anytime I've played it, like it just doesn't seem good. Like I don't know. Its whole like one energy and a choice band thing doing like a decent amount of damage for one energy, it just sounds really good, but like anytime I've played it, I just get wrecked. So I don't know. I don't know like what variant you want to play it. I've seen people talking about playing Golisopod Decidueye, Golisopod Zoroark, Golisopod Vileplume. So there's a few ways to play it, like, and I guess like post rotation, you obviously wouldn't have like the Vileplume or whatever. But I don't know. Like, I just maybe it gets better post rotation. But right now, I don't know. I just keep getting dumpstered anytime I play it.
Well, I think the big cards it loses, as far as like the different archetypes go, it loses obviously Vileplume, like you said. It loses Forest, so I think that makes the Decidueye version a bit worse. Also, the Promo Lurantis version, I think it makes that version a little bit worse. It loses Evolution, so I think really the only way that I can foresee at the moment is playing Golisopod with Zoroark, or maybe just maybe just with the Promo Lurantis and just like manually evolving. But that just doesn't seem that good to me on paper. The Zoroark one, out of all those archetypes, I think is the one that survives the best post-rotation based on what we know about the deck as it is right now. And so if that's the case, obviously you have a bad Volcanion matchup, which right now you can tech against with Vaporeon if you choose to. But I guess having said that, Zoroark is actually a good attacker against Volcanion, so maybe it's not as bad as I'm saying. You're a one-energy attacker, so in theory, your Gardevoir matchup is winnable. Maybe it's not great, but it's winnable. And Metagross, I'm not as enthusiastic about, but since they have Max Potion and you can't one-shot them, but I don't know, at the same time you have things like Super Scoop Up and Acerola and stuff like that, so I don't know. I think we all agree Gardevoir is definitely still a great deck post-rotation, but I'm not as sold on Golisopod just yet.
Yeah, me neither.
So
I want to send something up that disrupts my opponent. You know what I mean? Like, I want to send up Wobbuffet or Muku or something stupid. You know what I mean? But I just feel like there's so many outs to that kind of concept at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think we're all in agreement. We're just kind of like, maybe it's good. Like,
Yeah.
we'll see. I don't know, but Gardevoir is definitely the clear-cut winner for, I think, the best new
Yeah.
archetype to come out of Burning Shadows and what deck will survive. I think Gardevoir, just in general, is one of the best decks that survives post-rotation out of any decks. It doesn't really lose anything. It doesn't really gain anything, I guess, at the same time, but it just seems still just great.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, I guess I guess I'll throw one to each of you guys. What do you see being the best deck post rotation, or what's your top pick currently for the deck that you think survives it the best? I'll give it to Marcus there.
Yeah, I guess I personally, I really like post rotation. I really like Tapu Bulu, because I think it maybe that or Metagross might handle like Mega Gardevoir the best. But I think Tapu Bulu just has more. I mean, I could be wrong. I think Tapu Bulu has more like good matchups than Metagross does, and I think that Tapu Bulu handles Gardevoir okay. So I like personally think that Tapu Bulu Vikavolt is going to be, what deck that I would say if I was like going to go to a tournament post rotation tomorrow or something like that, I'd probably take Tapu.
Yeah. Me too, for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a very, very safe deck. Um, I'd probably, I might just be like a bandwagon dude, but I might even say Gardevoir. Like,
Yeah.
it's still just so good. Like, even though it has like a big target on its head, and people are like, "Oh, I'm gonna play Metagross." Well, a lot of people are gonna show up with Volcanion to beat Metagross. So I'm just
Mhm.
like Gardevoir's like, that's fine. Like, all these
Yeah,
fire decks can just beat that for me, and I'm just gonna beat everything else because I power
Mhm.
myself up. I have insane recovery. I have like
yeah,
an unlimited damage cap. Like, so yeah,
I
I
mean,
might.
Guardian.
What's that?
Sorry. I was just saying, Guardian only needs 2 energy in a band to one shot a Volcanion. So, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna say Gardevoir, and like you guys said, Tapu Bulu. I didn't put too much thought into it until we really got talking tonight. Um, but that actually does seem like a really good deck. Basically, I think any deck that can discard its energies is going
yeah,
to be a solid deck. That might sound like kind of weird. Yeah, whatever deck gets rid of its own resources is going
Mhm.
to be a good
Mhm.
deck.
yeah,
But yeah, so I think Tapu, I think that's definitely a solid pick. And also, like we're saying, not a fan of the deck personally, but I think Volcanion is also a very strong contender as well. Um, but I think I'm going to stick with Gardevoir though overall. So on the flip side, what deck do you think gets hurt the most by rotation? This time I'll throw it to Guy there.
I think pretty easily Espeon Garb. That's. I have on my notes for this video. I have a giant arrow pointing down next to Espeon Garb. I just think it's so bad now. I don't know. I just don't. I'd rather play Solgaleo Metagross in a like Volcanion potential format than Espeon Garb right now. Like I don't know. I just think it's bad, real bad now.
Oh
hey,
man. um,
still Galea Metagross. I kind of I was thinking the same thing as just like Garbodor variants, just because we're losing a lot of the things. Like I already said before, we're losing like best Bitcoin. We're losing Versus Seeker and like Trainer's Mail and Acrobike and stuff that like the ball search cards, level ball, everything. We're losing a lot of items that like will play it in every deck. So I think just Garbodor variants in general might be like getting a little bit more hurt by this than most other things, in my opinion. But yeah.
so does that mean Mega Mewtwo could potentially see play again? Just a random thought.
Yeah, that's actually not a bad thought. Yeah, not a bad thought at all. I just if it can hang with Volcanion speed, I don't know if that's going to be an issue or not. But it already runs Garbodor really easily. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It could. Blah, it could.
John Orchel would be happy about that one.
What's that, Marcus? I couldn't hear you.
I was saying John Orchel, he'd be stoked on that.
Oh yeah, he loves Mega Mewtwo.
Yeah.
I might pick Mega Mewtwo as like my underdog deck that could potentially maybe make a comeback. I don't know, but That seems like
Yeah.
a fun thought at the least.
Mm-hmm. Hey, one thing real quick, speaking of decks next format, what we didn't really touch on, you could always run Sylveon GX with Gardevoir and get its T1 Sylveon and search out all the pieces you need for your Gardevoir as well. So just kind of a thought there too. And if you need to turn to Disruption, you can always search out the cards you need for that a little easier. So just a thought, since we're kind of sort of mentioning Gardevoir here and there still.
Yeah, we totally didn't even talk about Sylveon. I guess we can mention it real quick. Do you guys think it does any better or worse? Because it was a very hyped deck going into Guardians Rising, so I think it's worth mentioning before we close out. Guy, what do you think about the traditional Sylveon deck, though?
I mean, interestingly enough, I don't think it's that terrible post rotation. I mean, I think since most decks don't, I mean, obviously, since no decks have access to be a Seeker, being able to get whatever supporters you want when you want it, aside from just your Tapu Leles, seems pretty solid. I mean, you can still run your 4-ofs for everything that's disruptive. You have access to Plumeria now, that you can guarantee discards from any Pokemon that you want. I don't know. I mean, I think it's definitely the traditional Sylveon may gain a little bit on rotation, as silly and sad as that sounds. And
Hey,
I definitely
no more Hex Maniac either, so you can't get like first turn hexed and lose that.
right, exactly.
So.
You can't get your EVs hexed, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It might be kind of a sleeper-ish pick, in my opinion, too. That's what I would go with as my sleeper-ish pick. And it might see play in Gardy GX, too.
Could be. So maybe
you could always use the GX move to, like, get stuff off the bench that you don't want, even in Gardevoir, if you don't feel like going for the 10 cards back into your deck GX move. I don't know. It's not a bad idea, I think.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys. Yeah, I think that's pretty much most everything. We even talked about Mega Mewtwo, so I think we've been pretty thorough.
Done. When you talk about Mega Mewtwo, we're done.
Yeah, we're good.
Hey, should we do one like random prediction for what you think could win Worlds?
Sure, we can do that. Since at the time of filming, it's still early on in August, so
Yeah.
we still have no idea what's going to happen at Worlds. So yeah, Guy, I'll let you take this one. Go for it.
Awesome. I'm going to go way out there and say Gyarados takes it because it can beat Gardy.
Interesting. Okay.
And Volcanion. So it can beat those two. Let's go Gyarados. Let's do it.
Okay.
Somebody's going to play it. You got to do well.
Fair enough. What about you, Marcus? What do you think?
I don't know. I don't know what would win. I really want to see Primal Groudon. I really want to see Primal Groudon win this thing.
That'd be great.
With Wishful Baton, I really, I don't know if it will. I've seen some bees hype, like in articles and stuff lately, so that would hurt Primal Groudon, but I want to say Primal Groudon.
I like it.
Wishful Baton, Primal Groudon. If I was going to play in the World Championship, I would either go with Wishful Baton, Primal Groudon, or Rubulu, but that's what I'm going to say is Primal Groudon.
I'll say this. I want Primal Groudon to win Worlds. What I think will win Worlds, probably not Primal Groudon, but I would absolutely love Groudon to win.
It has to. It's the last chance.
I mean, to be fair, though, it needs 4 energy to attack, and Gardevoir is a thing, so I don't know. But I would absolutely love for Primal Groudon to win, and in our set review, we kind of hyped up Wishful Baton a little bit. I don't know if it's actually going to be good in Primal Groudon or not, but it seems like a very fun card. And I actually am not going to predict Gardevoir to win Worlds. I think it has way too big of a target on its head. And in the current pre-rotation format, I think there's a lot of ways to beat it. So Greninja is still a decent deck right now. That is very well positioned against most of the good decks. But I'm actually going to say Mega Ray. That's that one's near and dear. But you beat Gardy, you beat Tapu Bulu. Well, unless they play the double Coco, you might be in trouble. But you beat Volcanion, Darkrai, Alolan Ninetales, maybe like Decidueye Ninetales. You can beat that too. I think Mega Ray is just such a good deck that no one, at the time of filming, I think is really talking about. And no one's playing Sudowoodo. At the beginning of the Guardians Rising format, we saw some people playing Sudowoodo, but not many people are playing it now. So I'm going to say Mega Ray.
I like that a lot.
So,
Primal
That's a great pick.
so.
but I'm rooting for Primal Groudon. If it's Ray versus Groudon in the finals, I'm rooting for Groudon, definitely.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right, so that I think that pretty much wraps this one up. And you know, like I said, I think we were pretty thorough. But of course, guys, if we did forget any decks, especially any like pet decks you might be thinking of, definitely let us know below in the comments. You know, maybe some other ideas that we may have missed for this one. But before we close out, I'll pass over to you, Guy, one more time if you want to give out, you know, any shout outs or plugs before we close this one.
I mean, you know, you guys run an amazing channel. I really appreciate you guys having me on, and I just appreciate everyone watching. And like I said, don't forget to check out my channel step by step. We'll be doing a lot more videos come a couple days once things are legal on PDCGO to get some new ideas out there. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciated it.
Nice. Yeah, no problem, Guy. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this one, guys. As usual, feel free to like and subscribe, and don't forget to check out our merchandise over at rarecandytcg.com. If you can pick up something, help support our channel, it'd mean a lot to us. But with that, we appreciate you watching, and we'll see you for the next one.